We'll talk boarding shuttles and capturing capital ships on today's Star Wars video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So, if you're familiar with the New Republic in Star Wars canon, but especially Star Wars Legends, you'd know they heavily employed Imperial Star Destroyers within their navy. However, most, albeit not all, New Republic Star Destroyers came from either ships captured while docked and under repair, or ships which surrendered to join New Republic service. The best example of this would be the Lusankya. The captain of the Super Star Destroyer was killed by one of his officers, who promptly surrendered the ship to the New Republic, becoming one of their Super Star Destroyers. That being said, it's not like large Star Destroyer-sized vessels were never captured. A great example of this is the Emancipator, formerly known as the Accuser, which was actually captured by the Rebel Alliance shortly after the Battle of Endor alongside the Adjudicator, with the former ship being captured through subversion and boarding, with the latter being nearly destroyed, then towed back to Rebel space and repaired. We also see in Star Wars Squadrons that the Victorum, another Star Destroyer, is hunted down and captured after it sustains critical injuries. This was all an attempt by the New Republic to further their Starhawk project. Now, this is in no way a closed list. There were other captured vessels, and I mean, the first book of the Thrawn trilogy is all about Thrawn trying to turn the tables and use special technology to essentially capture a rebel fleet, but fully healthy, active capital ships were not usually captured and turned. Rather, it was more often under construction ships, like we saw with the Eclipse in Empire at War, or defections. But why was this? Why was it that it was so tough to board and capture an enemy ship? Well, Lost Stars actually goes over this information in some nice detail. There are several factors which made a Star Destroyer in particular difficult to capture, which could be extrapolated to many other vessels as well. One of the main difficulties was size. You could certainly grab a Corvette or a small frigate with a powerful tractor beam, but when it comes to large vessels, Star Destroyers, Mon Calamari cruisers, powerful capital ships, it was very uncommon for one of those vessels to face off against a ship large enough to actually immobilize it with tractor beams, or even consume it like we see with the Tantive 4 at the beginning of A New Hope. That being said, there were still plenty of technologies which could help wear down or incapacitate a vessel. You could destroy the engines like the New Republic did to the Ravager at the Battle of Jakku. You could bombard the vessel with ion weaponry like we see at the Battle of Scarif, or you can insert a crew through some other means, like a boarding shuttle, sort of the central point of today's video. But simply getting to the ship is part of the problem. Star Destroyers and comparable vessels were extreme investments by the faction which produced them. And in every situation, it's preferable to see that asset destroyed than to go into the hands of the enemy. We learn in Lost Stars that the Empire has a series of procedures to prevent Star Destroyers from being turned over into enemy hands. There were sophisticated ship-based self-destruct functions, and these could be keyed not only from the main bridge, but also the secondary bridge contained within the heart of the Star Destroyer. So even if the captain is incapacitated or the bridge is taken by a Marine party, you still have leadership in the secondary bridge, which can blow the thing to smithereens, usually through some form of reactor overload, but there were certainly other options as well. Theoretically, and again, Lost Stars goes into this, well, you could disable the ship's self-destruct features. There are many other ways to kill a Star Destroyer, overloading individual weapons, or simply crashing the Star Destroyer into a nearby planet, or making a random jump into hyperspace without proper coordinates. All of those should be sufficient to destroy or at least mangle the target ship, which again may result in casualties, but is probably a better option than turning the asset over to the enemy. Some of these options are preferable. In a best case scenario with the Star Destroyer crippled, you see boarding parties coming, you give the order to evacuate, then you put on a timed self-destruct sequence, but these actions weren't always taken under perfect conditions. Beyond that, there's just practical considerations. How do you overpower the crew of a Star Destroyer to actually take it under your control. Through basic force, it's going to be very difficult. And going back one more time to Lost Stars, the Rebel Alliance basically has the perfect scenario there to capture a Star Destroyer, and they still fail. They insert a team, the team's insertion goes unnoticed, one member of the team knows how to disable the self-destruct feature on the ISD, and the skeleton crew means there's no one on the secondary bridge and not much protecting the captain. Even with all that, the captain simply rams the ship into the planet. By the way, that all kind of reminds me of the Cole protocol from Halo. Either way, as I said, that's the best case scenario. The intruders there even knew the ship's bridge code. More ordinarily, however, security would have been far more tight. Not only would there be ship defense personnel, but automated systems protecting the bridge and other critical points from attack. I think you'd have an easier job getting on a ship and sabotaging it versus actually capturing it. Plus, if you do manage to get on the bridge, take out everyone there, you've still got, in the case of a Star Destroyer, tens of thousands of other personnel who you either have to kill or subdue. So all of that while also trying to avoid your way getting lasered to the vessel in your boarding craft. It makes sense why capital ships usually went for the standard blow each other up with turbo lasers approach. Each faction really had their strength already. When it comes to the rebels, they relied on small strike fighters. They simply didn't have the manpower to overwhelm most capital ships. When it comes to the Empire, they had enough ships and were simply happy to capture smaller vessels if they needed intel, or just disable/destroy larger ones through the use of their more powerful capital ship weaponry. Where boarding I think makes the most sense is for a faction like the CIS, who have numerical resources, they have droids which can be used to directly land on, then attack the inside of a ship. You have some cool, like, modified droid starfighters, which then split apart and try to attack the inside of a ship. That would be cool. But you also see HMP gunships unloading troops, which they can only really do as effectively because they're droids and they don't have the same risk of loss of life. That being said, although they weren't common, there were still many types of boarding ships. Probably the most common class is the Drock from Star Wars The Clone Wars. It's the one the droids use. In Star Wars Rebellion, there's also a pretty cool mining craft repurposed for boarding actions, though we only see it effective against much smaller cargo vessels. But probably my favorite model of boarding vessel is the Sabertooth. This went in the complete opposite direction. Instead of being something small meant to sneak by defenses, the Sabertooth, according to the Legacy Campaign Guide, was unique in design and function, featuring two long teeth that extend down from its bow. They're heavily reinforced, adjust to any angle, and conceal close-range grappling systems, enabling the ship to capture and latch on to enemy vessels. The teeth break through the captured ship's exterior, allowing troopers, usually in zero-G suits, to flood into the captured vessel. Still, even this vessel features a lot of the same problems and would have been most useful against smaller ships. It only carried 250 soldiers. You still are vulnerable to a ship self-destructing, but it's a pretty cool concept. I'd actually really like in Star Wars canon, given that we know the New Republic turned their ship production down, to see a dedicated capture ship of like frigate size. Something specifically designed to leech onto Star Destroyers or other powerful Imperial ships. Maybe it uses ion weaponry or some specific weapon to put the final kick into an already disabled ship. But those are just my thoughts. That's my video. Let me know what you guys thought about all this and more down below.